Did you?
Okay. I'll record it in post and add it back. Off to you, Andrea.
Thanks for the introduction, Nick. Yeah. Well, here we have it, down the rabbit hole with Tina4. Okay, so I don't know if you've gathered this by now. Anybody's seen the Tina4 stack? There's a lot of interesting characters involved in it. It's definitely, I believe, one of the fun. Let's not call it a framework. Let's call it a stack. You guys can fight with me on that one. But I thought, I'd take you down this little journey of what we have to offer and what you can get done very, very quickly with from zero to hero, essentially. And I'm going to be developing this on the Tina4.com website as a journey for novice developers, to actually get familiar with PHP. And then also, learn what is encompassed in a framework from a basic level, and then hopefully that will allow them to continue to other things, or actually just stick with Tina4 at the end of the day, because I definitely think there's some elements in here that could be used to create projects quickly and things like that. So that's what we're going to do, a quick showcase and have a look at the various features. The most important thing from design perspective is we wanted to keep the language the main hero in what we do. So the emphasis is on you writing PHP, and we're a PHP group here, and I mean PHP is one of the languages I really enjoy writing code in. I know there's been a lot of efforts to make it, introduce typecasting and all those good practices and things like that. But it remains a language where you can spin up a little script and do some things quickly. Interpreted language, it's got its pros and cons. But again, I have a big love for the language, and also there's always been a need to have available tools right from its inception. Developers have been trying to build libraries and things, and we've got Composer that came along, which allowed us to share things, and I mean this is just essentially an extension of that, hopefully to help you get to doing what's most important is coding. So the principles in Tina4 is that you use what you need and you code how you feel like how you want to structure things. There is a structure, but it isn't inhibiting you to program like you used to program. Whether that's good or bad, best practice or not best practice, it gives you the freedom to reuse code that you have or libraries that you have, and it doesn't really conform you into a certain pattern or make you confined or boxed into something that you're not familiar with. One of the principles, keep it simple, stupid. It's definitely something that I don't like to see lots of code if it's not needed, and Tina4 is like that. There's been a lot of refinements and things and optimizations. So the idea is that we have a very small code base. It encourages a person or developer to go and have a look at what's under the hood. And I've been encouraged to find people submitting, pull requests and actually suggesting fixes and things like that. So that's great. I think also great for old school developers who, functional programming, procedural programming, top-down type of things. It's a good way to introduce object orientation. And it's also a good way for newbies to start using PHP. And another thing, I think, something that I've been encouraged to see happening recently is just the way I can play with other frameworks and integrate directly into that. And even to the point of where we use what we call virtualized routing, instances that I've done recently, plugging it into WordPress and Magento. So there's some things there that are making it fun. So let's have a look what's in the box. The most important things, I think, just to highlight debugging. You can argue, well, debugging is in PHP. I mean, it does tell you what the error messages are and things like that. I'm going to show you what happens when you apply a Tina4 to your debugging. Environment variables, again, standard things. Twig templating, we chose the Twig template engine as our preferred template engine. And yeah, it makes it easy to get that started, even to the point I say, you know, making a basic website is very, very easy. Annotated testing. So that's something that I'm going to have to show you. You can have a look at that and see what you think of that. And then annotated routing for OpenAPI and Swagger UI. We've got database abstractions supporting SQLite, MongoDB, Firebird, and MySQL. So yeah, with an ORM and migrations. And then there is definitely some caching that's happening in there. PHP Fast Cache is the library that we've chosen for that, and that essentially allows you to choose how you want to do your caching and things. So without further ado, let's have a look at some code. This is I'm going to go and have a look at the installation. Obviously, with Composer, you're going to do a require. Some of you might have noticed that the name has changed because it used to be under my developer account, so now it's under Tina4 stack. So we're busy building a whole bunch of libraries under that. I'm also trying to modularize Tina4 into different packages. So each of these should be able to be used in whatever PHP environment is using Composer. So, you know, you can actually, for example, put in shape. I'll explain what that is in a moment. And you could, for example, say, well, I want to use the Tina4, you know, debugger in my project. So you could add that in, and you would have some of the functionality there. As we release a stable release, we're going to start extracting more and more of these modules, and then I believe one could pick and choose what you would like to use from Tina4. So let's have a look. We've got our Composer installation done. Some of you would have seen the original version of Tina4 wouldn't have had access to tools like this. You would have to go and create your structures. So this is essentially just something with a vendor folder. Those of you familiar with Composer, all the libraries get put into the vendor folder, and you then code around that, you know, create an index.php. So we've got a command line runner that's been added to Tina4, so you can actually go and run an initializer or bootstrapper, and then that goes and creates for you your starting point. So it's all in the documentation, hopefully, and you can have a look. And what this has done is it's gone and created our whole folder structure and things like that. We even have an index file to get started. So next step, just Composer start, and we're up and running. So Tina4 has a built-in web service. It's an enhancement of the standard PHP one. The idea is that we keep it thin. You don't need to have a Docker environment or anything like that. If you have her running, you'll see this 404 error page because we haven't got anything in our project. And that is, you know, a sign that you can get working. I want to have a look at shape. Shape is like an extension or language-driven HTML. So essentially, you can actually do declarations like this. All the HTML functions are, how can I say, put in with, I'm trying to get to in equals here. Why can't I do that? Is this a keyboard issue? All your HTML functions are actually prefixed with an underscore. So you can actually type things like this. And I don't know who's very good at HTML over here, but yeah, you want to have things like this. I'm now putting some tags into place inside an HTML body. I remember, Nick, you said you were interested in looking into this a little bit more in a previous session. I'm going to echo some HTML, and I'm going to put an H1 tag over here. We want some properties for it. So those of you familiar with all HTML, I hope you can see what's going on over here. Okay, so back to our browser, and we should be able to refresh there. Do this. Where are we going here? Not seeing anything. Have a look here. It's funny when you test all your things, it's always working on the. I'm just going to see if we can get it there. I see it's outputting the HTML. Let me check if I can get my composer start. Nick, is there any way I can move these screens around on the, or hide away all the people on the chat?
On Zoom?
Yeah, no, just having, I'm getting a little bit, here we go. Let's have a look if we can just get that. I'm going to get my web server up and running again. Okay. So I'm expecting the things to happen a bit differently here. I'm going to move on. I'm not going to get stuck over here. I'm going to go back to, you've got some other things, different files over here. Let's move on to have a look at some routing. I think that's the next part. I'll get back to shape. We can maybe output it on a route. Doesn't seem like it's happy here. Okay. Right, so let's have a look at the structure of Tina4. We got a source folder where everything runs in. Now, you have a templates folder here where you can actually go and put your twig templates. I'm going to show you this because it involves dynamic routing. We're going to put a file in here. We're going to call it meetup.twig. And I'm just going to put a basic hello over here. And then we're going to go and have a look. It hits up that. Okay, I need to run my server. So running the web server, you can say composer start. You can also give it a port after the composer start so that you can run it on a different port. It's also running perfectly out of the Docker. So if you've got your Docker environment running, you'll be able to check that out. So what happened over here is I went and said, I want the route meetup. And that was essentially this twig file. Okay, so you've got all your twig functionality and things that without even having to configure twig, you've got it running in here. It's also got the ability to inject variables, things, I believe, Tim, we discussed this at some point. It's got the ability to turn this on and off. You can actually go over here into your twig and you can say that. And as you can see, there's a variable coming through. So it injects server variables. It can even do session and request variables in your path. Moving forward onto this, all your twig functionality, those who work with twig, you'll know you can do your includes and requires and things like that. So that's all available. There's no configuration required. Going into routing, you can literally go and make a file here, give it any name of your choice. Say, yeah, meetup.php. And you can have a look, you can start writing code. Okay, so those are familiar with PHP, we're going to get some interesting results here. As you can see over there, there's hello. I could write a function over here and it would be able to be used in my application. I mean, this could return hello. Okay. I don't know if you've noticed, but what's been happening while we've been working, we've got this debug trace that's been happening each time we've hit up the page. So it's got this very verbose debug methodology going over here. If I had to go into the system here and just make some mistakes, maybe one of the common ones, division by 0, or even just let's have a look at a couple here. A refresh again. Okay, so what's happened here is the debugger's kicked in and it's giving you a warning that on this line you've got a problem with your code. Okay, so we're using a zero tolerance for errors in the system. I know this is a pretty severe one, but essentially what happens while you're working, even if you've got minor issues and things, like it's going to keep on popping up this box while the debug mode is on. And it's going to tell you about where you've got your problems in your code. So I just think that if you fix bugs, early on in the cycle, you've got a better chance of getting successful code out. Let's have a look at, you could obviously go and do some other things. Let's say we could echo a variable that we haven't declared yet, and it would do the same thing. What you have inside your command prompt is you actually have the line where it has a problem with your error in red. So you can have a look. You can even go to the line where you had your issue. So that's one of the tools that we use here that's really making the things effective and efficient. Okay. Are there any questions on this functionality? Is there anything here that anybody wants to ask something about the debugger? Okay, moving forward. Annotated testing, while I'm here on this method, it might be good to have a look at that. So here I've got two variables. We want to return A plus B. And I want to test this. So we can put in an @tests, and then we can assert something. 1, 2 equals 3. Well, let's see if that could be 4. +2. And then what we do is we can simply open up another command prompt. And we can do a composer. Sorry, not a composer start, composer test. So we've got all these little methods built into Composer, which help make your life easy. The reason for annotated testing is that your unit tests sit close to where your methods are, so that you can actually, have a look at what's going on. Yeah, it gives you pretty verbose, actual was 3, it expected 4. So you could write a whole bunch of tests. You literally just go and add another line over here with another assert. There's various ways of doing different things here, but essentially it's asserting to see if something is true. And then we can run our test again, and we can have a look at how it's working. Okay, so we've got 100% pass over there. Let's move on to have a look at how we would code in a virtual route. I've got some scratches here that I saved pre-session. So we're going to have a look at a simple get router, see how we could add that to the mix over here. So there we've got /meetup, and we've got that. This is the route. Notice what I'm doing over here. I'm just running an echo. I could write any code here that I wanted. And we're going to go and refresh over here. We can take that out. And notice that the router has taken precedence over the twig template. So we had a twig template called meetup. This is actually the same name. If I change its route name over here, we'll see that the previous one will kick in the template. Okay. So, I mean, one can argue, you know, how useful is that or what it's about. The essential thing is it's just a way we've tried to make things functional and easy to work with. So if you don't need to write code to output HTML, things like that, you don't do that. You go and just create your twig files and use them as you would like for normal static pages. Generally what happens with routers and things like that, you've got two input variables and you've got the ability to return back responses. So we're going to have a look at some of those things. I just want to go back to where we're at. We've got routing. I'm going to move forward a little bit here. Annotations, we've had a look at the testing annotations. We can have a look at how we would actually use annotations for the routes and Swagger. So what we can have a look at is inside our routing file, we could add another routing file if we wanted to. So we could add another one. I don't know if you've noticed that I'm not actually going and including these files or requiring them or anything like that. Making use of Composer's autoloaders for those things. And yeah, so anything that you put in these folders, you can even overwrite those folder types and you would actually end up getting your structure as you want it. So we have the response always first, because route is going to require a response. And then in some cases, we might want to have a request. I think this is similar to some of the frameworks. And then you return your response. Okay, so this path over here, testing Swagger, is going to return us something. We're going to have a look here. I can just quickly declare a variable, say person. We're going to have a name. And we're going to return back that array. Okay, so testing Swagger. As you can see, what's happened is it's gone and outputted a JSON response. Okay, we can actually then go, we can say, well, what type of response code do we want and what type of format we want for our responses. I can even go over here and say, well, you know what, I'd like this thing to be in XML. And then we have an XML layout of that variable. Okay, going a bit further, one of the most common things is if you're building APIs is you want some documentation on your APIs, you want to actually see, you know, give it over to other developers or even for yourself just to use it. So also using annotations over here, can give a description for this testing Swagger. We can give it some tags. We can have a look. We've got a built-in route called /Swagger. And as you can see, that has gone and documented out this route that we have. And then you're getting your response. Okay, Anyone got any questions at this point before I move on to having a look at how we would work with ORM?
Just why XML?
Why XML? Because we can. Because we can. I think one of the things also is I even want to have a look at some type of WSDL support, you know, in these parts. And the other thing is to have a look at even getting you know, the JSON standards, you know, coming out in these things without applying any real code to it. Things like this, you know, transforming it, no JSON encode, decode needed type of things. It's just doing that, you know, based on what the inputs are. I think moving towards more strongly typed things are going to help with this and make this, you know, a bit easier to work out. But yeah, that's where we're heading with that. One of the things we mentioned earlier is that we have got migrations. I just want to have a look here. We can actually create and connect to a database. I'm going to show you how that works. We can play around with SQLite for this session. Do the same thing with MySQL and then Firebird. All of them are working the same way. So there is a database abstraction in place here, so that you're not really fiddling around with database specific logic. So this here is just creating a database connection to testing.db. There's a reason why it's inside this config file or anonymous function here. You can actually move it out, but this is the recommended way to do it. It's all got to do with when certain elements load in the system, so static versus dynamic, and that's one of the reasons that this is in this space. So you need to have a database connection before you can start working with migrations. Otherwise, Tina4 is going to tell you, well, you need a database connection. So how do we create migrations? We've got a special route for that. This only works when you're in debug mode. So you go /migrate create, and you get to type in a SQL statement. This is just going to create a table people. Okay. We're going to throw it in here. And we're going to create our migration. So what happens is it goes and puts that migration in a folder called migrations and with a date stamp. And you can then modify this or change it before the first run. Also, if there's an error inside here and you try and run the migrations are run from the route migrate. You can have a look, your debugger is kicked in and it's telling you about your failed syntax error that you have on your SQL. So fixing that, you would get then a successful migration run, and then successively to that, it would just tell you, well, this migration is already run. Best practice, I would say, you know, don't go now modify your migration files after you've already run them on the database. That would be just crazy, but you know, that could happen. And you just go and create more migrations. There's no rollbacks or things, and this is not a fancy migration mechanism. It's just simply just, you know, you keep on adding migrations to fix or correct things. So yeah, it's supposed to be straightforward and simple. So what we've ended up with now, we've ended up with a testing database. It should have, you know, a people object in it. And then you'll see there's a migration table which just keeps track of the migrations that have run. So yeah, if you hit issues, you can always go and flag them as passed, or you know, tweak it around if you need to. But that's where they stored. Right, let's have a look at how we would now take the data from the database and actually use it. We can go to our command line and just run Tina4. Composer Tina4, and it's going to give us a little menu with a few options. So over here, I'm going to use this for create ORM objects. So I get for, and then I'm going to change or create that from the people table. Okay. So what that has done now is gone and put a little class here, an ORM object inside our ORM folder. And it's gone and done field mapping. Some of the stuff isn't necessary. It assumes a lot of things. But you'll notice that the camel or the underscore fields from the database convention be mapped to camel case. Okay, so it's something that it does. You can ask questions about that if you want to know more about that, but essentially map from underscore case to camel case in the system. Let's have a look at how it used that to actually go and create a person. And the system will get a list of people, maybe just a simple save as a starting point. I'm just going to grab this, make it easier. So API convention, probably something like API peoples. Hey, you guys fight with me on that one? I don't know. So we got a get. I'm going to use this to actually create a person, just to show you how that works. People. And we're going to have a look here. So here we're going to say people. And we can, well, we don't even have to add something, but we can essentially just go and say, it's going to save it. Okay, so that's basic ORM functionality that we've got in the system. Let's have a look if it's going to run for us. And then we'll have a look at actually making it work with Swagger. Okay, so there, what's happened is it's returned back the first, it's created a record, returned it back for us. I'm going to just do it again. You can see it's incremented the ID. We haven't done any validation checks on this. So obviously it's just going to keep on creating what we would call duplicates. It's not an issue for what we're doing over here. If you wanted to do something more special over here, this is a get. We've just used it to add people into the mix. You can actually go and select. You could say, I want to select some people. You can even add expressions to this, like where statements and things like that. I'm going to do something special here. I'm going to return it as a result. Now, result in Tina4 from an ORM object actually gives you something which tells you how many records there are. It gives you the database fields back, and it also gives you the data. So it's quite easy to consume this type of information if you want to do some Ajax grids and things like that, which we're going to get to. Let's have a look at how we just add the annotations for Swagger. So we'd just go at description. Okay. We would say, what is this? This is going to give us a whole lot of people. And I'm going to put some tags over here. This would be the people thing. And I'm going to say, well, example of the data that we're going to get back. Do something like this, people. So if we go back to our Swagger, we would be able to start querying this router. Yeah. So this is all happening, you know, as you write your code. There's an example of what would be returned, and there, you know, coming back is your response on the system. Okay. Adding people into the mix. That is something that we can have a look at. I think I've got that already saved over here. We can go and take this. This is a post. Okay. Post, obviously, but you're going to want to have that secure. You don't want people just hitting up your API. So that's simply adding a description here at secure. we can go and make this API tuples to conform with the previous thing. There's something interesting going on here. With the request coming in, you can pass it through a JSON object. And when you instantiate your ORM class, it can use JSON as an initiator to actually populate the values. So that JSON comes in, populates this object, and then as you can see over here, I've done a save. And then there's a response with the result of that. So we're going to see how this works. I've also said, well, we want an example over here of the person that we're gonna add. And the other thing is I'm going to need a token for this secure route to actually allow me to generate or to create that person. So I'm going to have a look here. I've got just a sample of that. Check. Here's a bit of sample code to do a token, which we're going to then use to authorize ourselves. Obviously, you won't just output a token for someone, like this. You would probably do some validation or, get a username password or something like that. But there we've got a token. We're going to obviously refresh this. Let's have a look. So it's the Swagger. I just want to check if I've annotated the put this in the right place. So there we've got our auth. We're going to get our token. And then it outputs a JIT token for us, which we can then go and use to authorize our secure requests. So now we should be able to go and do a post with the data, obviously just a JSON object, which I'll have here. We're going to put it through. And we're going to execute this. Did I execute it correctly? I think so. Let's see, execute. There we go. So it's added an extra person into the mix and then another one. Okay. So this is mapped in from that object. You can give it different, just normal PHP classes, objects, and you can give examples just by annotating the router with a description or an example like this over here, and then that maps over to your ORM folder to the class over here. Okay, any questions before we move past this point on Swagger annotations, creating objects? I hope you're seeing it's pretty straightforward. If I'm going too fast, you must just shout and stop me. If there's anything, anybody got any questions on this section?
I was going to ask, just from the backend perspective, how much work was it to get all this working in such a auto magic way?
I think, look, I think the most critical part of this was to see how a person would like to work. Now, I'm not prescribing or presuming to know how people work, but I try to think of a way that would seem natural. The biggest library involved in this is probably the ORM library. This is probably our biggest headache in the actual framework, is this one here, ORM. So yeah, it's a lot of work. I think there's still some refinements and things that need to be done, but it has been now stable for pretty much more than, I would say, a year, that this ORM thing is really working well. And yeah, I think there's little things like dates and stuff that normally trip people up. We've actually got all of those little headaches sorted out. You know, so saving things now into a database is really a breeze. There's an addition with MongoDB now to do NoSQL, and I actually did a mapper that transforms your selects and your insert statements from normal SQL, you know, into NoSQL language. So maybe that's not the best thing to do, but it's something that makes it easy to keep things standard. Does that answer your question?
Pretty much, yeah. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah. So once you've got the look, let me go back to the front page here quickly. There's a reason why ORM or ORM, that's ORM, we call them ORM, is this little monster thing over there. So this little naughty character. All of these characters over here represent different parts of the Tina4 stack. So we're going to be putting little character profiles together for all of them, and they have their little characteristics and things, you know, that make it happen. Yeah. So we've created, well, an ORM from the database, and that wasn't that difficult to do using the built-in functionality. Let me show you something that we're quite proud about or quite excited about. And this is something which really saves us a lot of time. I'm going to say here new people, which is the ORM object. And I'm going to say here generate CRUD. Okay. That simply is a path which I want this CRUD routing to be created on. All I have to do now is just simply hit it up one of the endpoints to initialize the code. And what happens is it creates what we call a Crud Router. So a Crud Router is something where you have a single path and it does literally create, read, update, and delete for you. There's a bit more to this that I'll show you now. But there's you've got a switch statement with your events as they happen. So you'll create, after create, update, after update, delete, and after delete. So these are events or areas where you can manipulate your ORM object. So inside here, you'll see that the ORM object is actually passed through for you. So you could say, well, I want to, you know, create a password or something. You would say, well, before I go and save it, I would maybe set that person's password or email address or something. You know, I could go and do a code manipulation over here. Yeah. And as you can see, it says, well, they manipulate the object. But let's see what's happened with this. Okay, let's go and take this route over here and have a look what it's created for us. Okay, so we have a grid. It should be searchable if we start looking for things. This is all Ajax driven. We've got the ability, obviously, just to manipulate the objects. Yeah. And yeah, okay, there I can edit. And if I want to change things, I can go and have a look inside my source folder under templates. And what it's done is it's created a structure here for me where I've got the ability to modify or change the Bootstrap code that was generated. We just use Bootstrap as a generic, you know, HTML, CSS interface on it. And then he has a grid with all the includes and libraries, which you can also fiddle with. This is data tables. Okay. This doesn't mean that you have to use this. However, if you decide you want to use some other methodology to generate or auto-generate stuff, you can actually go under the public folder over here under components, and you can actually define how you want your generations to work. So these are things that we've built for you, but you can go and change it. There's nothing stopping you from adding whatever other library or you know, front-end interface that you want to generate. So, you know, there's a modal, the modal that pops up, you know, and we've got base is just inheriting, a simple template with your jQuery includes and your bootstrap and things like that. So over there, I've just changed the form, and as you can see, that data is popping up over here. Yeah. So the idea is that you get a lot of stuff done very quickly. I'd like to see if I can spin up some of that or shape to see if we can get the HTML generation happening. And then let's just have a look what else I got left on the thing. We've done modifying templates. Yeah, the soft landing, how do you help with Tina4? Well, we've got a place over here. I don't know if anyone has seen the new website, but we've done an overhaul on the previous or the original website. So the version 2 is here. And we've got our documentation happening. So essentially, anyone who feels that they can contribute or wants to add to the documentation can literally just DM me and ask me for access, and they can add or contribute to what we have here. So we try really hard to document all the functionality. There's a lot of things that sort of get missed, on what it can do and can't do, and those things. And we're trying to get all of those things into a really good space without making it difficult or overwhelming to get started on. So I think most of the feedback that comes to me is almost like a person, doesn't know how to get PHP running in the beginning. Those are the pitfalls, I think, with starting any development, setting up your development environment. And we're really trying hard to make that, not an issue. Yeah. Let me see if I can get Shape up and running for us. That's something that was really special for me to have as part of this. I did an example over here, and this seemed to work well. We can actually see the actual HTML outputting on the command line. It's just an object-oriented HTML system. Over here, I've got there's a ID attribute on the H1, and I've gone and overwritten it over here, HTML by ID, and then I've changed it to testing. And as you can see over here in the output, it's actually gone and changed it. Now, shape you can include into any of your projects, simply by composer require. You don't need Tina4 for it. And that's essentially what I'm going to do, is break out the other modules and make it easily accessible to anyone who wants to just use what they want. Even the annotated testing is going to be broken out. So if you really want to have annotated testing in your project, you can just use that module of Tina4. There's some other little things that maybe worth noting. I've had a look strongly at things like PHP metrics to evaluate the code and things like that. So those are things that I'm interested in just improving code, and also unit testing and things like that for the core of the Tina4. Just to keep things in line and make sure everything's well checked and tested, because as this grows, I mean, I'm sure you guys would understand, it's going to become a nightmare. Touching on maybe a little bit, going a bit back when I said there's an environment, file or configuration. This is basically what it is, where you can set debugging on and off, or you can create, global variables and things like that for your project. Yeah. I think that's a wrap in essence on the core. There are some other modules that are coming at a later point, which report what you see is what you get report engine. There's also a report engine where you pass it an SQL statement and literally generates your PDF, HTML, and CSV based on the SQL that you pass through to it, with grouping and all those type of things. Yeah, so open it up to questions from anyone who's got anything to comment or ask about. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for the talk. I will say it has come quite a long way since you spoke about it last, because you did do a talk at PHP Cape Town last year, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
And yeah, so like big props. Building this stuff is not easy. So yeah, I know Jonathan asked earlier while you were doing the testing in chat, for the annotated testing, have you got mocking built in?
No, I don't have mocking. I'm still trying to think of a good way to do that. So I'm open to a chat if someone's got some good ideas on mocking, because I've even had a look at libraries that I could use for that, And I mean, there seem to be some pitfalls with some of them, and I'm not an expert in that, but mocking is definitely on a list of items that we want to have. And I've just seen that creating good tests is definitely a challenge. I mean, it seems to me like you almost have to, it's like an art form. So yeah, it's a tough one, but I'm open to suggestions on that. I think a lot of stuff comes from people's recommendations. I think way back, Tim said, hey, you need to make your Swagger UI, open API friendly, or what's the version that you're using, that type of stuff. Someone else said, oh, you need to, what about bootstrapping your environment, just adding little things, like these extra bits, in your composer file. Simple thing, but just automating that for people has helped tremendously. Yeah. So I'm open to discussions. I mean, I'd like to hear from people, this is a good way to do it, or even if you feel you want to tackle writing something like that, because whatever's out there is very bloated. A lot of the things, even like with the annotations, I try to use libraries that existed already with annotations, and I just found the code was very bloated, to do simple things, so now that's part of the challenge, deciding when do you write your own thing and when do you use somebody else's components or libraries. And the one component in Tina4 which I really think is great is Twig. I must give kudos to the people who wrote that. I really enjoy the template engine. I'm not sure how everyone else feels about it. I know you probably got some Blade or something else that you enjoy, but Twig for me has been a really good piece to have as part of Tina4. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. My other thought was also on the testing. How difficult is it? I assume it's not too much, but how difficult is it to just run normal PHP unit? And I asked that specifically because I'd imagine at some point the test might get a bit too large for comfort in comments.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know what you think on that on size usually. Is it a smell that you should be splitting things up?
I think for the size of projects that you probably want to do in Tina4, you're doing things that you want to quickly prototype something, and you want to have some basic tests in place, and you want to make sure that you get a good start. If you eventually decide you're going to move those things out to PHP unit, I'm using PHP unit, and there's another test, the name escapes me now, to actually do my sanity checks, in Tina4. So I think you have to, as a developer, you have to decide, am I at that point where this is a monstrous thing that I need to have separation of concern, have my tests separate. I think to have a few tests on critical parts of your software system, as opposed to 0 tests because you couldn't be bothered to work out how to set them up, is better than having no tests at all. So that's just my thoughts on, why the annotations. It's sort of like, well, you're here, just write a test for this, so that you don't have to worry about it later. Yeah.
For sure, makes a lot of sense.
Any other thoughts? Any other questions about some of the things you've seen? Tim, I don't know if you can make any comments about what you saw a year plus ago and what you see today.
Tim actually had to run a while back.
Okay. All right.
But I was going to ask you basically that. How long have you been at this?
Well, I mean, it's been through various versions. The version 1 was actually stable for about 4 or 5 years and ran various projects and things like that. This has also been in development for 4 or 5 years. So officially on day of inception, I think it's been 11 years when I first came up with a thought of doing this. It's now 11 years. Yeah. So that's a bit of a while to be, I mean, I won't say working on it full time either. I mean, you do this sort of part time in the evenings, over weekends or whatever. And yes, definitely had some people helping and contributing. Yeah. And then perhaps just some thoughts from Barker. I know he's been using Tina4 with another project. Maybe he can elaborate on that for the rest of us. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So one of the things I've been working on recently is a WHMCS project where there's quite advanced reporting needed that actually goes beyond what WHMCS has been designed to do. So we started off fairly basic, and then the client starts saying, "Can we have a pony?" And WHMCS would say, "Yeah, sort of, but we're not going to do that." So reporting there is very procedural. So in the end, you end up, they've built things and they've also encrypted a lot of their reporting logic. So then they actually echoing things out of arrays and things, but since it's technically closed, you can't really amend that. So I started actually ending up writing my own echoing, if you like, of report data, which actually ends up being a ridiculous procedural step. So something that Tina4 can do, which is quite advanced and requires some effort to set up initially, is you can actually run Tina4 inside of another framework. So something like WHMCS uses Laravel Capsule, and it's very specific routing. And so what we've come up with is actually hijacking the routes on WHMCS and then actually running ORM, running everything that's great about Tina4, which actually ends up quartering the time it takes to push out these kinds of things and enables more advanced functionality. So that's been really great. The Slack channel is a great spot for actually asking for help, and there's a very active community. So even if Andre is not available at the time, a lot of our core people frequent that, and some of the actual people that contribute as well outside of our team, and that'll actually get you help very quickly. So nice thing to look at. You can actually create API endpoints, which is something I'm looking at doing in this project soon as well, in WHMCS modules and things. So then I can abstract extra API information from the database, which is not really available in the core API. So a lot of interesting stuff you can do with that.
Yeah, if you want to be part of the Tina4 Slack community, I mean, just DM me with your email address. I think there's a little form, sign up form. Yeah, but DM me. I'll happily add you to that, and you can get all the latest updates and things. Any other thoughts or comments?
I had another question, but I forgot it now.
Yeah, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Have you done sort of like load testing on this? I know it's, that can go a lot of ways, but I'm just curious if you've played around with that as well.
I do speak, well, I do want to really push it. I mean, I've got some things that are running on at the moment. It's doing really well, performing, exceptionally well with regards to content generation and distributed content. Load testing and stress testing, also security testing, are things that I really want to run it through the hoops. I actually discussed that with Roger, and definitely looking forward to pushing it through its paces on that. And then I think the thing is that we often as developers don't, always recognize with PHP is that a PHP script is something that has to have a very small runtime. It's something that's supposed to load in milliseconds. So I think if you bear that in mind, and especially with Tina4, that's what the idea has been. Have something that runs really fast. Gets from point A to point B quickly, and as long as you keep to that sort of thought process, not trying to run long-running things in your code and doing things badly, I think then you get the best results. And I think code bloat is one of the advantages with Tina4, that you don't have a lot of that. I've done some tests based on, I know there's this whole thing about green websites, so probably bring it to everyone's attention. You can actually go and check if your website is green friendly. And I mean, done some of those type of tests with Tina4, and it's come out really tops on those type of things. So that might not be the same as stress testing, but it does indicate as to, how small the code base is and how efficient it is. Yeah.
Great stuff. Yeah. Any other questions from anyone?
You mentioned that this is just to spin up projects quickly. I missed it or I dropped out, but we have any aspect of pagination responses inbuilt?
Every single, it's a very important one. I actually missed it on the RM side. Every single select statement, RM object and things is paginated automatically. So the as result set is coming back with pagination. Even the grid that I showed you, on that Crud example is paginated. That is one of the things that I think, built in right from the beginning, makes it that, let's say, a junior dev or someone who's not really familiar with these type of, optimizations has got that out of the box. And then that also reduces load on a server and things like that. So thanks for bringing that up. That is actually something that we're also quite proud of. That's in there, by default. Yeah.
Nice.
Any other people want to ask something?
Yeah, I'm out of questions personally. I need to take a deeper look.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
appreciate the
that's something, that's why we're doing these that's why I love this opportunity to present it. I mean, yeah, I mean, the only way to see if you like it is to go and give it a spin and let me know if you find issues or something. I mean, and, play with it. I think for me, the whole idea of this is that it must, really accentuate just the ability just to write PHP. I think we're trying to really put such a thin layer around everything, but then it's like, oh, well, it's got that, it's got this. I mean, there's API abstractions as well that we've done. You can send emails easily. You can consume APIs easily by extending, certain classes built into Tina4. It's trying to make, your life simple. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
One other thing I noticed, but probably not an issue.
Adil, do you want to repeat that? We're just not hearing you.
Yeah, if you can just repeat or type it out in the chat and I'll read it out. Dill, we've got to fly you down here. Got to come join us. We'll go join Andre's team in Panama. I think we've lost him.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks everyone. Yeah, I think, but really reach out to me if you want to know more, if you want to, be part of it. It's definitely a journey.
Yeah. Where are you active mostly? Where's best to reach you?
ZA Tech on Slack. I mean, Slack is always open. I can leave Skype details. There's like a capture form on Tina4.com. So direct email. I mean, I think Slack is definitely the best for immediate chats and responses. And I'm always open to showing someone something, 15, 30 minutes, whatever, giving them an overview on how things work. And then just encouraging people to join the Slack channel, because that's where they can ask questions. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you very much, Andre. Awesome talk.
Yeah.
Glad to see the progress. I hope it goes swimmingly in future, and we'll do another one next year.
Yeah, maybe it's version 3 that's going to be out then. I think we'll still be stabilizing this one, but yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome.
Hello.
So, hey, welcome back.
Andre, I sent you a message.
One more thing. So now the talk is concluded. We're on to the last part of the evening, which is the raffle for the Jetpens license. Unfortunately, only 3 people applied, or 4 people. Oh, wow. 4 people. Last I checked, it was 3. So if I can get a bit of a drum roll there. Anyone? Okay, I'll do it. And then there goes the generator. And the winner is Annika. Annika, I will email you your license key, and hope it serves you very well. It'll be for any Jetpens tool, not just PHP Storm or anything. And yeah, please do use it. So thank you to everyone else for coming, and please join us for the next one. Take care.